Welcome to Bitesize Edge. We are the podcast that focuses on unleashing people potential. I'm Jules Montague, and today I'm talking with Karen Moyse. Now, Karen is a leadership coach specialising in a particular kind of coaching, which I'm not going to reveal at the moment because we're going to have a chat about that today. Now, prior to entering the world of coaching, Karen did something very different. Karen was a deputy CEO of a large global communications consultancy. Sounds rather grand. Good afternoon, Karen. Thanks for joining me today. It's lovely to have you here.
Hi, Julia.
So tell me, deputy CEO of a global communications consultancy to leadership coach, how did that transition start?
Gosh, I think when you're managing a team like I was in the comms consultancy, a lot of it is about talent and about potential. And there were a lot of things that I couldn't do very well at all. But one of the things I was very good at was bringing on talent. And that was the thing that really gave me the biggest buzz, the biggest enjoyment, and really why I was successful. Because in the end, as a leader, it's all about the people that you work with. So I was in pharmaceutical at the later end of my time in the consultancy. So I knew nothing about pharmaceuticals at that point. So it really did force me into probably for the first time, leading rather than consulting my way out of trouble.
I love that. Leading rather than consulting your way out of trouble. Now, Karen, I know you quite well. And I know there's a very not devilish side, but a rather cheeky, driven side to you. So when you say that, I can totally imagine you in that place. So leading a team, recognizing talent, that's where you were. And I'm guessing it was a really high pressure position that you found yourself in at the time. Were you working in central London?
Yes, it was definitely high pressure, like a lot of people, with two kids as well, trying to vaguely keep fit, stay married, all of those things. And I loved it, and I loved the company. But yes, it was very high pressure. And certainly when my dad died, just a little bit before, actually, I really, the old cliches kicked in, which was life's short, and I really decided everyone in the family was happy apart from me in terms of the family life. So although professionally it was really satisfying, from a family point of view, I just wanted to have my life back, actually.
So was that the trigger point for you? Was that the point that you just took a moment and thought something's got to shift and change?
Yeah, most definitely. And I think for a lot of us, it's often these momentous things in your life which you react to almost instinctively. I can't say it was a logical decision, and everyone thought I was completely bonkers because things were going well. But when your dad dies at 65, it does wake you up, and you go, Jesus crikey, life is short, crack on. So I wanted to be able to work with the clients I loved and with the people I loved. I needed to earn a living, but also I wanted to have a different way of being. It was a big decision because my husband has his own landscape business as well. So two people running their own businesses, you're thinking, oh my goodness me, will the mortgage get paid? So it was it was a big deal, but it was something. I mean, I tend to make decisions quite rationally, I think a lot of the time, but the big decisions, I have to say, I'm running purely on instinct. And I just knew that was the thing I had to do. And actually, it was the best thing. It worked out incredibly well, as scary as it might have been at first.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because as you're talking through that, Karen, it makes me think about the question, and I know it's a really big question, and I don't expect you to have, a really straight down the line answer to this, but that question around, can women have it all? Whatever all is, can we have it all? So you've talked quite openly there, and it's not anything that I haven't heard before, around that professional world being fabulous but so high pressured and so much going on there, that the area that actually was being impacted was you as a mum, you as a wife, you as Karen, outside of this working world. So in essence, in order to get some form of balance or some positive impact in the personal world, you had to step away from this senior leadership role that, in your words, you loved.
Yes, I mean, it's, I mean, I suppose in terms of having it all, define all. And I think for different women, having it all is, you know, everyone has their own definition. And it also depends on your family circumstances. And I was very lucky that we had the financial resources to have a lot of help at home when I was, you know, doing my mad job. And also my husband worked for himself, so he had more flexibility with his hours, and he took a step back in terms of his career to do that. And I think it's a question of age and timing. I mean, I started off, you know, very young in communications. So actually I got to a board level and got to a senior position very quickly. So I had, well, I'd been in the business a long time. So I'd already sort of been there and done that quite a lot as well. So all through my life, I've tried to reinvent myself, actually. And it's partly because I get bored, to be honest. And I like and I like new challenges, and I like to be a little bit scared every day. And which is terrible because I'm actually quite a scaredy cat. You know, so it's but also it's knowing yourself. And I know, and this is, I think, something that we've all got to, it's very hard to get to grips with. I see it a lot in coaching, but you've got to know yourself. I knew that if I carried on in that role, and I was being asked to step into the CEO job as well, I just knew I was one of those people that was just, you know, do it to the utmost in your ability. And I would have made everything a lot worse. It wasn't that the company was asking for that. They weren't. And in fact, there were some great mole roddles.
Mole roddles, I like that. I'm stealing it.
That's a whole different coaching thing. Role models. Dare I say, both from men and women. But I just knew that for all sorts of reasons, pressures I put on myself, my own background, that I was just going to be working 18 hours a day in that new job. And that was nobody's fault apart from my own. So there was all of that coming into play as well. But just wanting a new challenge, actually. And in fact, my agency became my biggest client for 10 years afterwards. So it all worked out for everybody.
Didn't it just? Yeah. So that's really interesting, the fact that you wanted a new challenge, you like to be scared, although you're a bit of a scaredy cat. So thinking about everything that you learned in your comms days and working through all of those organizations to where you are now, I mean, we talk so much about transferable skill sets, and sometimes we don't see it ourselves until we're doing a new role and think, hang on a minute, all of that experience and knowledge that I gained in what is deemed to be a completely different industry and context actually serves me so well in the new role that I'm now doing. So now, Karen, you are a leadership coach. And I said in the intro that you specialize in a particular type of coaching. So in a type of coaching I'm really interested in. So talk to me, what is this particular type of coaching you do?
Well, in 2012, I retrained as let's call it a classic coach, which mainly because we were doing a lot of communications coaching. I mean, often you migrate, don't you, from one job to another, as you know, and you know me well in that area as well. But frankly, I didn't think I was very good at it. I didn't enjoy that type of coaching at all. And it was partly because, having come from consultancy, you're so trained to add value, to provide advice, to you feel as though your value is all about your contribution. And in fact, as a consultant, your main job is to listen. To be honest, the best consultants do most listening. So I think it was a very difficult transfer for me. And one of the reasons I was so interested in Time to Think was I thought it was an antidote to my worst behavior as a coach. It sounds terrible, but this is the truth. And then I went on a little course, a foundation course with Time to Think. And in fact, Pippa from Edge was there as well, which was,
yeah.
And saw this demo of this new way, or to me was a new way of coaching. I mean, it's been around for 30 years, you know, pioneered by Nancy Klein. And I saw a demo of a young lady being coached. She was in digital and she was deciding whether to go to Australia or whether to live here. The world was her oyster. And watching this Time to Think coach work and seeing this girl's thinking take off, and yet the coach being so quiet and so encouraging without speaking, and creating so much ease and so much confidence in this person, and this seeing this her brain take off. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. And our brains, you know, they're much cleverer than working in a linear way. So her brain sort of took off, and then so she's all over, and you could have heard a pin drop, and then all of a sudden her brain just went zoom and came in to really what she needed to do. And the ease and the conviction and the speed at which that happened with this very skillful coach, I just thought, that's what I want to do. I want a type of coaching which really encourages the thinker's own independent thinking. It really does that, because even, I mean, the Gottman Institute did some research, and even among the, let's call them the helping coaching professions, they were interrupting every, well, 3 years ago, it was 11 seconds. It's gone down to 9 seconds. So what do the rest of us do? We don't have this opportunity to have that space to really think for ourselves. And what are people paying for? There's all this knowledge, all this brain power. And yet we're all going, oh, what do you think? Or am I allowed to think for myself? Just think of that talent potential if you were able to have that experience on a regular basis. So anyway, I watched this and was humbled and thought, oh my goodness, I was right. I do need to become a different type of So, and then went on to train, which was, I have to say, was tough training.
Yeah.
Which I wanted to do it, actually, because it did go against my background. So that was really useful. I lead with it. But what I do now, you mentioned the point about transferable skills. Your clients will always either also know what you have to offer. It's very interesting. And now what I do, I lead with that all the time. That's my base. But everything has to be led by what the person in the room needs that day. They may not want to think independently that day. I mean, last week, one of my clients came in and said, right, I'm going for a new job tomorrow. I need to prep for the interview, so it's got to be, it has to be where the client is. And really your first thought as a coach is that person in a position where they want to do their own independent thinking? And sometimes that's a question of encouragement, but sometimes it's that they just need something else. They've got a presentation, or they've got to, practice that difficult conversation. So as a coach, you're really navigating through that but creating, for me, the key thing, and I think this is the same for a lot of coaches, but it's more extreme for time to think coaches. It's creating this environment, this thinking environment, which is so curious about what you're going to say next, so encouraging. There's so much equality, rather than I coach, you client, which just is not empowering for people. So anyway, I'm blurring on because you can tell I love it.
It's fabulous. It's fabulous. And it's really interesting, Karen, because, we met when we could for coffee once upon a time when lives were very different to now before lockdown. And I remember the conversations we would have because you were in your training phase and you said how challenging it was, because it was challenging your own way of thinking and being. And that you had that level of self-awareness to understand what kind of coach you wanted to be and aspire to, and you're not scared of learning a new skill. You jump into it fully, and that's just fabulous to observe, and just to see that journey to where you are now, your confidence having grown, your ability. So as you're talking about it there, I'm going, oh my gosh, this is extraordinary. This is a fabulous excuse me, space that you create for your coachees to be in. So I guess my question around that, on that whole point of being in lockdown, we've worked together in the training room. We love it. We love being in that face-to-face environment. There's nothing better than that energy in a room as you're training and working with people. So how have you found it from a coach point of view, from going from that face-to-face environment, not just in your workshops and in training, but more specifically with your coachees? How have you found it from that face-to-face to that virtual setting when it comes to really specifically that whole time to think, that space? Because you don't have the all of the cues to pick up on when you've just got their head in a box, as it were, to be working with. So how has it changed for you?
I think to begin with, I was quite rebellious about the whole thing.
Were you?
Yeah, as you can imagine, because there's something about breathing the same air as with other people, and there's something very visceral about that, and it's physics, really. I think the lucky thing was, because I work in pharmaceuticals primarily, I was already using Zoom for my international clients. So that helped. And then I think it was just really to be honest, it's the old coaching thing, isn't it? Accepting that there was going to be a difference, that you had to encourage and set things up in a much more specific way so that people had as little interruption as possible to their own thinking. But, in the thinking environment, you can have lovely quiet, but we all know, you're on your Zoom call and then, your client's son comes across in his underpants as he's trying to get his clothes.
Yep.
So or there's all the pinging and ponging, or, just life, really. So I think, you have to go with that. And in some ways, first I was sort of grieving really for that physical contact. And I that is really important to me. But the opportunity is huge, because it means that people don't have to travel. It means I don't have to travel. I don't have to get on a plane. As much as I like doing that sometimes, I don't like doing it loads. And you've got to think about the environment and all those things as well. But also, I think what we've all discovered is that, particularly if you've met someone before, I've done it without, but there is an intimacy one-to-one over Zoom, which actually some people prefer.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
It's weird.
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting point, that there is an intimacy about it if you choose to accept that this is a way that we are going to be doing things onwards. It's not that whole, well, now we can get back to normal, whatever that normal is, and be back in the face to face, because we've realized that we can use technology to our advantage. And actually, there's so many good things that come from being in this world of virtual coaching. That first part, and I remember having a client say to me, the key thing for me when I'm in a coaching session is that I feel safe. And this is my safe space because I'm in my own environment. And I think it mustn't be underestimated how important just those small elements are. And it makes you think, gosh, yeah, the importance of just being surrounded by familiar and safe and secure, and all of those elements that as coaches we want our coachees to feel. But sometimes when you're in a windowless room in central London, with doors slamming and all sorts of things going on around you, it's really difficult to create that environment.
I totally agree. It is about, ease is perhaps one of the, well, I was going to say the biggest part of time to think, but I would probably say generative attention should be at the top. But the ease part of it, you're right, people are more easeful at home if they can find that private space and they're not having to sit in the utility room, which with the washing machine, which does happen, as we know. So I think that's really important. And I have to say, face to face, one of the things I learned very early on, place is such an important part of the thinking environment. I pretty much refuse to coach in offices, someone's office now, because the ease isn't there and it takes too long for them to relax enough to think. So that causes challenges as well. Because you have to find the right place that isn't too far for everyone to travel. But I think you're right. You know, at home I'm sitting here talking to you. It's different, but I've got my cozy blanket. I've got the coffee. It's not really bad, is it?
It's not really bad.
And we've got used to it, haven't we? We've got used to it. But I will be very excited. Overexcited, I know me, when I'm breathing the same air as someone else. I know I will.
The Tigger will come out, won't it, Cara?
I have to give myself a serious lecture.
I love the Tigger energy. It's fabulous. So just to wrap this up, when we're talking about the excitement of being back in breathing the same air, you're a keen skier. And I'm guessing you've been pining for the slopes somewhat over that last year. Have you got any plans to get back out there on the piste?
Oh, I keep making plans and then they're dashed. The thing it has encouraged me to do is I am on that Pilates mat every day.
Well done.
But I had to stop watching Ski Sunday because I kept shouting abuse at the television about the unfairness of it all and what were they doing, the social distancing, and how come the Swiss were allowed to do it and we're not. Bitterness creeping in, so that had to go. So it'll happen. I think it's just keeping fit, and it could all be a lot worse. I feel very fortunate. A lot of people, crikey, I'm worried about skiing. Other people are worried about people in care homes, and I coach people on the front line, doctors on the front line as well at the moment. I tell you, that keeps your head on, because I do moan about things, as we all do, but really, perspective it gives me a lot of perspective about what's important.
Are these doctors and nurses? Yeah.
Absolutely. And, hats off to them as well. So it does, they're my thinking, I can't go and ski. Well, actually, they're thinking, my goodness, will I be able to see my family, because I'm having to stay away from my vulnerable family because I'm working on the front line, and it's, that's been a privilege to coach people, and totally fascinating.
I bet. That must be, yeah, a very humbling experience, I'm guessing.
Yes, it does really it does really make you think about what's important. Full of admiration. It's yeah, absolutely full of admiration and fascination.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So, Karen, I could sit and talk to you for hours, you know this, but I'm going to bring this to a close now, our podcast to a close. But what I do want to do is just allow anybody who would like to, who's interested in maybe experimenting with the idea of time to think coaching, or something's triggered their interest in our conversation today. How do people get in touch with you? How can they find you?
That's very kind of you, Julia. The best way is probably just by email is the most useful, and that's Karen, spelled Karen, just funny pronunciation, Karen at kineticfuture.com.
I'll share that as well.
That's really kind of you. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. And can people find you on LinkedIn?
Yes, the trusty LinkedIn, most definitely. The profile's there.
And it's Karen Moyse,
Karen Moyse, yes. So you can see there, and there might be some useful articles on there for people as well. I'm doing a series at the moment on how to avoid burnout and keep creative and innovative.
Oh, brilliant. And you're sharing all of that content on your LinkedIn page.
Absolutely. So that's
wonderful.
Articles, that's in there. So that's useful, and useful for me too, because that's something that we've all got to be aware of.
Haven't we?
Yes.
Wonderful. Karen, thank you so much for your time today. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I really, really hope we can get together for a coffee very soon.
Me too. Thanks, Julia.
Take care.